Hi, my name's Nicole and I'm the crazy vegan in my family. Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to Nurturing Compassion. If you're new here on this channel, I talk about becoming your most compassionate self through veganism, sustainability, and just love and personal growth. So if that's something you're interested in, please consider hitting the red subscribe button. Today, I want to talk about how my family feels about veganism, me being vegan, and just how I deal with it all. So I was raised in a ridiculously Polish family. Learned to speak Polish before I learned English. Literally went into kindergarten not speaking English. It's fine. But something that goes along with being ridiculously Polish is food. Food, as many sociologists have said, is really how you get a look into another person's culture. So when you look at the standard Polish diet, it consists a lot of animal flesh. It feels like everything Polish has some kind of animal products. If not meat, it has cheese, it has milk. And it was the way that I grew up. You know, I grew up with meat on every single dish that I ate. And I remember when I was a little kid, I must have been like 4 years old, maybe a little younger. I was eating some chicken and I looked at my dad and I was like, wait a minute, chicken isn't really like an animal, the chicken, right? And he was like, well, no, you know, this is an animal and you need protein, etc., etc. And my first reaction was, I don't want to eat animals. I remember that even my dad, who is a very keen omnivore, he said, it is possible to eat a healthy and balanced diet as a vegetarian, but it's much harder. And he basically was like, listen kid, we're not making you your separate meal, so you're gonna have to eat what your mother makes. After that, you know, I would kind of be like, oh man, okay, well, I don't have a choice. And then randomly, as I was growing up, it would come up here and there every couple years where I would say, hey dad, can I be a vegetarian? No. Eventually, when I turned 17, I was in this AP English class and we were supposed to write a paper, we were just given some sources. Okay, pick a side, write an argument. And it was about animal testing. And automatically when I read the question, I was like, no, we should not be testing on animals. And shortly after that, I really started diving a lot into what goes on in factory farming. And I was appalled. I mean, it's kind of weird because I feel like I always had this inner knowing that the way that people raise and kill animals was inhumane. I somehow knew that the farms you see on TV and all that was not the truth. And I can't tell you why, I just knew it. I remember I went downstairs to my dad and I said, I want to be a vegetarian. And his automatic response was no. And I said, no dad, I want to be a vegetarian and I'm going to do all the research that I need in order to do that. And he looked at me and said, that is what I've been waiting to hear for all these years. So that was really awesome, right? My dad is this like very standard American diet, Polish diet man, but he understood, I think, that loving animals, the amount that I loved animals, was something more than the way that his other kids loved animals, that most other people care about animals. And he just wanted to make sure that I was doing this in a smart way, that it wasn't just him cooking up things, balancing this and that. And he thought it was much more complicated than it is, but he didn't want me to just get all this food and then not actually learn how to balance my nutrients. So I love that story. I think that is so awesome. I went vegetarian and then when I went vegan like 4 years later, I was kind of in the closet about it for a couple months. I was very nervous because it was always like, well, she's vegetarian, but at least she's not vegan. And so I really felt like I needed to prove that veganism was healthy before I could come out and tell my family that I had chosen to go vegan. Basically, What happened was I tracked all my nutrition in Chronometer. When I finally ended up telling my dad, I just pretty much told him that I'd been tracking my nutrients and that it was good. Do you want to see it? And he's like, no, that's good. Okay, I trust you. My father has always been so supportive. However, my other members of my family, I can't say so much about. I know that I have been very many times referred to as that crazy vegan. What I've realized is that getting butthurt about that, getting upset about being called a crazy vegan doesn't help anything. It really just makes the tension grow. It just makes things worse. And so if I have to be called a crazy vegan because I love and care about animals, I've accepted that. That's fine. I am a crazy vegan. I love animals so much, and I want to do everything I can to stop their exploitation. And so if that's the label that I get from that, then I'm okay with it. Different people are on different paths themselves, and just because you've made the realization that eating animals is wrong, it doesn't mean that everyone's there yet. I think that it's important to not only treat animals with compassion, but other people too. I've also noticed that when you try to have conversations with family members about veganism, doesn't always go over so well. I know that one of my family members, she volunteers at animal shelters, donates to animal shelters, absolutely loves dogs and cats, but refuses to see the connection that if you love animals, then you should not be eating them and you shouldn't pay for other people to kill them for you. And trying to have that conversation, granted, after a couple glasses of wine, did not go over so well. I think that there are times to interject and times when you need to offer your insight, but you need to do so in a very respectful way. For example, I have been accused before of sounding condescending when I talk about animal rights, and that is not on purpose. That is literally just because I am so confused by the world that we live in, by this world where it is okay to say you love animals, and yet it's also okay to eat them, where animals are not granted any moral consideration at all. That is just so fundamentally wrong to my soul that I can't help but get worked up about it. I can't help but be upset. However, talking about it more and more, for example, I am taking an animal ethics class. That has helped me a lot in toning it down a little bit, understanding people's perspectives, seeing how other people think through this issue. It's given me a lens, because what I've realized is that this world is so crazy to me, but it makes sense to this guy. Why does it make sense? Trying to see it from their perspective and meeting them there is really the key. So, okay, you think animals were put on this planet for us to use. Why do you think that? Where is that rooted in? And then you kind of gently nudge them in the direction of compassion. Even if you feel like you aren't making enough progress, you aren't being forward enough, you never know how what you say can affect them or spark a reaction for them to start thinking about things more deeper and differently. Because I think that anyone can look at what goes on in factory farms and say, there is something wrong here. It's so frustrating because it is something that I am so passionate about, something that I know down to my soul to be right. But yet, all of us vegans, we are so outnumbered at this point in time. And so we have to accept that sometimes we're going to look like the crazy people. But we just have to do our research, we have to stand our ground, and know that what we're doing is the most ethical thing that we can do. Also, it's the healthiest thing we can do. Veganism is the only diet known to actually reverse heart disease. It prevents cancer, it prevents heart disease, it prevents obesity, it minimizes our environmental impact, and I think that slowly people more and more every year are awakening to that. So that's kind of where I'm at. I am the only vegan in my family, and if you ever feel alone, just know that you aren't. There are people who are in families that don't get it at all, and I definitely know that a lot of it has to do with my Polish, very Christian roots and just their viewpoint of animals, what they're here for. I think a very strong lack of knowledge about what happens to animals in factory farms. So again, if you're the crazy vegan in your family, don't feel alone. There are many people like you. I think that building a vegan community, if you can't find one in person, then just online, is very, very beneficial in overcoming that fear and that frustration that comes with being the only vegan you know, the only vegan in your family. Have you ever been called a crazy vegan, and how are you reacting to it? What are your thoughts about being a crazy vegan? Let me know in a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye!